Have you ever received an email that sounds like this?
Hi, I noticed that you've been consistently uploading content and actively working on your channel, which is great. While going through it, I found a few areas where small improvements could potentially help improve overall performance and increase discoverability.
Or maybe this.
Would you like to grow your Apple podcast with 1 million new downloads every month? Yeah, who wouldn't? Choose the perfect package. $200 for 50,000 downloads, $400 for 100,000 downloads, $1,000 for 250,000 downloads. I'm telling you folks, the stuff is insane.
Podcast promoters, they're a dime a dozen. And while it might seem like the smart thing to invest in paid podcast promotion, oftentimes these services sound too good to be true. Because they actually are. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why you should stay away from these podcast promoters, including what you're actually paying for when you give these folks money month on month. And shocker, you're not getting podcast growth. I'm also going to break down 3 different ways that you can promote your podcast today for free. And none of it involves posting more on social media. When you pay $200 or more to a podcast promoter who messages you on social media, they'll promise you the world, right? Increase your downloads, grow your organic reach. But if you actually sat back and asked yourself the question, what am I getting for my money? In most cases, it's anything other than podcast growth.
Emilio, how do these promoters work? Like, what's their methodology?
Yeah, so I mean, there's actually a few different ways, but one popular way is they're using bot farms.
Yes.
Right. So different bots and crawlers on the web that they are able to use so that they can create mass amounts of downloads without actually going through the process of downloading it. I mean, I have also seen some cases where somebody has an actual kind of like media device farm and they're like actually clicking on downloads. That was kind of the old school way. But now you don't even need that. Right. You have bots that are able to basically get you multiple downloads by removing that download, downloading it, and basically playing as fake listeners.
It is 100% fake downloads. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And the thing is like if you just look up pictures of these bot farms, like you literally will see racks and racks and racks of cell phones all connected to computers. They're not going to help you. If anything, they're going to hurt you. And hurt you badly. One, you're wasting money, right? Like $200 is literally being flushed down the drain.
So when it comes to light that these are not real downloads, like one thing that you can really rely on and that you bring to your audience is your credibility, right? And so really connecting with that audience, if you're just kind of paying for fake downloads, you're not really bringing your credibility to that audience, first of all. And then second, that audience, that big audience that you think you're talking to is not real. And then that kind of gets into credibility with whoever you're working with as well. If you're working with an advertiser, a lot of times they're going to find out about this. Whoever your hosting platform is going to do some review of your stats and is going to find out about this. And then that leads to other consequences that can hurt you even more in the long run.
So if paying for so-called podcast promoters is off the table, how do we actually promote our show? Well, guess what? I've got 3 tips. They're all free and none of it involves social media. First of all, do not sleep on podcast guest swaps or showing up as guests on other podcasts within your niche.
This is a really great place to start. And this can honestly help in a bunch of different ways, whether you have had like a podcast for 10 years or you're just starting and you've only had it for 10 days. Podcast guest swaps can be super helpful in terms of like kind of giving you practice for being on other shows and then being able to leverage that audience, right? Because you can tell them about the show that you have. And if some of those listeners are resonating with what you're talking about there, that may give them a reason to listen to your show. And then vice versa, right?
If anything, you might be saying like, well, what, looking at them as competition. There is no competition in this. Like, get that out of your head. That doesn't exist. I often do guest swaps with podcasters in the movie review niche because I know that the audience that consumes that show would probably be interested in what I have to say. So really what you're doing is you're doing a giant commercial with someone if you're podcast guesting. The other benefit too is that they might have a massive audience that you could tap into. And one little sneaky trick that I want to talk about that if you're not doing this, you might want to try to look for building relationships with guests that might be outside of podcasting circles. One of the things I started doing with my own show was I would find influencers on TikTok who were talking about movies, but maybe they weren't podcasters. Because they had built a influence on another platform that had an audience that's adjacent to mine, by bringing them on as a collaborator, as a guest, it automatically pulled people that were interested in that person's content into my podcasting kind of audience. They'll share clips of my show. They will comment on my show. It's more than just downloads.
Showing up as a guest on other podcasts or podcast guest swaps is a great first step to growing your audience beyond your current reach and building a relationship with other content creators that can work for the long term. But I've got a question for you. Are you treating your podcast like press? If not, you should be. Pitching your podcast to different trade publications and PR agencies is a fantastic way to get on the radar of movers and shakers within your niche that go beyond just the social media scroll.
So what this means is reaching out to trade publications, PR agencies, and at the very basic, just asking if you can be included in as press. This is something that I actually did with my own show. My goal initially was I want to get free access to screeners so that I can talk about them on my show. So I did what I thought was crazy was I just emailed the studios. It's not hard to find. You just go to studio website, find their email contact, and just email them. They couldn't get me the screener because there are actually things that have to be done in place to make that happen. But one thing that they said was, hey, can we forward you over to the agency that handles all of our press releases and get you on as press for films that we have coming out? And because of that, because of being treated as press and not just being treated as a podcast, I was able to get included in emails telling me, hey, there's a local press screening happening at your theater. Here is the thing. Do you want to get access to it? Yes or no? Okay. What that does is, again, do the work of building my podcast as a brand within the circles that I want to have influence on. And it also tells the PR agency when I go and cover a movie that they send me that, oh, Brian and his podcasts are good ones to send more things to.
Let's recap. Find the PR agencies and trade publications that align with your show's niche and pitch your show as press. Because ultimately, if you're a podcaster, you are a member of the media. And speaking of press, have you tried reaching out to your local media? Yes, your local news.
Local news media is starved for stories.
Yeah, that's true.
Seriously, you might think like, well, why would the local news want to hear about my show? Well, maybe you've got an amazing guest that it's really like, oh man, I can't believe this person came on my show. That's news. Maybe you hit a landmark when it came to your podcast. Maybe your podcast opened a door locally somewhere that you facilitated. Those stories are fantastic lead points in with local news. So some things to keep in mind with this strategy, though, and this is just, it goes to not even just local, but even when you're thinking about emailing these people outside of your sphere of influence already. Don't just go in saying, hi, my name is Brian. I do a podcast. Can you write a story about me? Please don't do that. You gotta put a little thought into this. So ask yourself the question when you're formulating that email. Ask yourself the question, what is the value I can provide to the person I'm sending the email to the news contact that I'm emailing, that would be a benefit to them. What's in it for them? What is it going to help them out with? The other thing to keep in mind, give yourself plenty of time. So if you know you're going to have this amazing guest in your show that does have a local connection, don't email the local press the day the episode drops. Okay. Don't even email them, I would say 2 weeks before the episode drops. I would give a good month, 2 months in advance of, hey, the episode's coming out on this time. I've interviewed so-and-so. It's in the can. So it requires some pre-planning just because of the fact that local media needs time to move on these things and has to fit into a set schedule. And this last point here, I think, is really important too. And it's really a matter of show whoever you're emailing that you've done your research. Now, Amelia, what does that maybe mean, that you've done your research?
I mean, you probably should look into the press that it is that you're kind of applying for.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe provide an example or two of like kind of where the alignment is, so that they know, like, okay, this isn't actually a good fit.
Right. What previous stories has the press covered that you can see crossover between your show? And it might just be a thing like, hey, I saw that you published this listicle of the 5 best local podcasts in my city. You know, let me tell you why my podcast might be worth putting the next time you do that listicle.
Now let's put it all together. Avoid paying for fake downloads and fake engagement that isn't going to legitimately grow your show. Instead, start by reaching out and collaborating with like-minded podcasters and influencers within your niche with the goal of collaborating and growing your reach through their audiences. Then, treat your podcast like press by reaching out to PR agencies and trade publications within your niche and asking to be included on email lists and newsletters. And finally, pitch your podcast to local news media. Be mindful that your podcast should have some alignment with what that platform has traditionally covered in previous news stories, so that your podcast feels like a natural fit with what is going on in their content calendar. Don't fall for fake downloads. Real growth happens when you connect the right people to your podcast message. This video really just scratches the surface on podcast promotion. If you want a little bit more information about these tactics, as well as a couple other ones that didn't make the cut in this video, do me a favor and click the link in the description to download my podcast promotional guide. And if you need more help launching, growing, or monetizing your podcast, do me a favor and check out this video.